everyone. Welcome to the Porthole to Justice, the window to the truth. My name is Amelia Duran, your host, and it is September 7th, 2018. My guest today has been a frequent contributor to the Porthole to Justice. She is a grandmother and an activist, Kathlee Arthur, who has championed the First Families Act, which is a Senate. It's a bill, a Senate package bill that promotes family preservation and the foster care kinship programs, things of that nature. So I'm going to go ahead and give her a call. Wonderful lady. Let's see. Okay. Here we go.
Hello.
Hi, welcome to the Porthole to Justice.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so I was just giving a little introduction, kind of sharing about the First Families Act a little bit, but I wanted, we have a lot of new listeners, and I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, sure. My name's Kathleen Arthur, and I'm one of the Grandma Warriors. And what we did was about 3 years ago or so, we all collectively had grandchildren who were kidnapped from us by the local Health and Human Services, either by not looping us in when there was family problems or just out and out if the mama was poor and the babies qualified for 4E, they just took them for profit by planting false evidence into the court, committing fraud on the court and that sort of thing. And so there was a collusion of a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, 5 or 6 ragtag grandmas that walk into Washington, D.C. don't normally walk out less than 2 years later with the president signing a bill. That just doesn't normally happen. But a couple things did happen that were just absolutely undeniable and that we could prove and that really helped for this to take off. And one of the very first things and one of the most important things that occurred was that on January 3rd of last year, there was a ruling on what was called the right to lie case. Us going and telling our senators that, look, these guys they're lying and they're planting false evidence in order to take the children. I mean, they're empathetic with us, but they just can't do much with that. That's not factual. That's a social story. That's a very low-level proof, right? And so we couldn't get documentation because, of course, Health and Human Services wasn't giving us the ghost on anything. So when this federal case came out, it was the first real solid proof that we had that what we were saying, which they did believe us, they'd heard it so many times, they knew that it wasn't just happen chance, that this was really happening. But, knowing that something is correct and being able to act on it with actual evidence is two different things altogether. So that's why this was one of 3 puzzle pieces that happened simultaneously that occurred that this bill went through, which was the reason that this bill went through. So the right to lie case came through, and basically it said that, anybody with an IQ greater than 60 degrees, an average temperature in Alaska should know that you cannot lie and plant evidence in order to take children from their parents. And so this was a federal question that they were asking if they had the constitutional right to do this or not. So, by a federal level, it getting to a federal level for a fact check is just absolutely bizarrely amazing. So if you have the ability to look at that up, and it's called the Right to Lie case, but it's a case number, federal case from the 9th Federal Circuit District, and it's case number 15-55563. The other part of the 3-tier puzzle that occurred was that the FBI started collecting data. We knew that foster children were disappearing. We knew that the kids would just go. And, in this age with Facebook and that sort of thing, that you should be able to find a, teenage grandchild. And so we knew that the kids were disappearing, but we didn't know where to. And so anyway, the FBI and this is, again, a thing that you can go and tell the senators, but until you have proof on it, you just really, they can feel sorry for you. That's about it. Mm-hmm. So the FBI has been collecting data, and they have found that the overwhelming majority of prostitutes in America are coming from group homes. Overwhelming majority. They're doing raids that are as high as 85% of the kids that are being taken as prostitutes are current foster children. And the average rate of the foster child being taken, 40 to 50% of the kids taken never were reported missing. Now, let me review this. This is really federal government paying Title IV dollars to group homes to raise these children in the tune of $9 billion per year. The total foster care budget is only $10 billion a year, so 9 out of 10 of the billion was going to foster care homes. And because when you look at it statistically, that almost all of the prostitutes of America were foster children, something is happening, right? And so the senators, on 2015, they had a hearing in the Finance Committee, Wyden and Hatch, and it was called No Place to Grow Up, and they heard testimony about the real link between prostitution and foster care, and that it was Title IV group home dollars. That was.
If I can just interject really quick, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's not just that. It's the whole process, Kathlee. You know, right. These children are, it's traumatizing to be removed from your home, even if it's an unhealthy situation or dangerous environment. It's a trauma, and then these children step into situations where.
Do you mind if I go ahead and finish my little three tiers? Because I may end up answering your question with the next one.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say they're objectified.
So what's happening in the link between Title IV payments and prostitution and children not being reported as missing and are active prostitutes is that if you think about this is what's happening. Title IV is a federal dollars, and 9 out of 10 billion goes to group homes. So we've got these kids in group homes. They're active prostitutes not being reported missing, which pretty much makes their caregivers, what is that word that you take care of somebody who's a prostitute? I forget what it is. Anyway, so we're spending our dollars, basically for sure, factually raising prostitutes. Mm-hmm. And so what the Family First Act has done is it took the $9 billion that were going to group homes and put that money up front to prevent entry into foster care in the first place. So that was the second tier. What was really very helpful for us and what really, really helped us to get to the end, which was the ability to actually pass the Family First Act. And the last one is perhaps the most sad of all. Because Title IV only pays the counties money if the child's parents are on food stamps, and that's how they measure poor for 4E. All of the foster care counties in all states, because of the way that the payment was made, are targeting poor children for entry into foster care and ignoring the middle class or underserving them. So we've had a very skewed system. If you are a poor young mama in a poor hospital and you have a positive pot test, your baby will very likely be taken. But if you're a mama that has a positive pot test in a non-poor hospital, particularly if they have the DSHS offices in the hospital, you are at high risk if you're a mama on food stamps. Mm-hmm. If I were you, I just wouldn't go. Foster girls are also at huge high risk. There was a recent Supreme Court decision about a young 17-year-old foster care girl that they would not let have an abortion. They don't let foster girls have abortions. They make them have the babies and they take them so they get more product, because part of the 4E payment is the Adoption and Safe Family Act, which was not removed. Let me repeat this. It was not removed in the current Family First Act. So that's still the fatal flaw with this act. So what happens is that when the child is taken from a family member and then removed over to an adoptive family that's not a family member, the local county gets a adoption bonus. That is the local county, not the child, not the parent, not the adoptive parent. The actual county gets paid bonuses for taking kids and then completing successfully adoptions to non-family members. So if that child was given to a grandparent, aunt, or uncle, they wouldn't get the bonus. And let's say there's 4 kids in the family. That could be anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000 bonus for one family for the local office. I mean, think about the awful scenarios that puts together. And so that was another thing that I did talk about and did get put into the Family First Act, was that they no longer have the being poor to qualify for services. That's no longer a factor. So that'll take the targeting aspect of poor kids away from it. And so those were the 3 really super major things that happened. And then it was just kind of coincidental. Because of Trump, at the time that it was signed in February, he was just busy firing Republicans left and right. And they were afraid to talk to him, basically. So for the first time, like almost ever, the Republicans and Democrats started talking to each other, and they actually came to agreement on this bill. So since they both agreed, and it finally did pass through by consensus with all of the senators and through Congress and Ways and Means and all that, all they had to do was get the president to sign it. So it was actually slipped in 3 different times before it was finally signed in February under one of the extensions of the government bills.
It's something that kind of hit hard was when you said that the 85% of these children that are missing and become trafficked are coming from the foster care system. And I've archived that data and information in the Porthole to Justice. And, the sad thing is the way that the system is set up is these children are objectified from the moment that they step into these placements. And I've had so many guests on my show, Kathlee, that are former foster children that are pregnant and aging out of the system, and their children end up in the system as well. It's a vicious cycle.
90% of foster girls who are not out of the system when they give birth, and they won't let you out of the system if you're pregnant, trust me, they are breeding children to sell for the office by breeding foster girls and not letting them get abortions. But we can't make them stop. I mean, it took it going to the Supreme Court for a migrant girl to get it to stop. This is just absolute bullshit. And we can't get them to release the figures, although we know for sure it's happening. Just ask any foster girl who's lost a baby. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, you wanted an abortion anyway. We're going to take it now. I mean, that's literally what they tell them.
It's so sad, and I've actually, I've kind of adopted one of the girls in the Porthole to Justice. She's been a guest on the show, and she's generationally targeted by CPS, and she's come on the show very bravely and spoken to this issue in the system because she still has her little girlfriends she considers sisters that she was in foster care with that are actually going through this.
Let me read you a quote here. This is from a foster child. Being in foster care was a perfect training for commercial sexual exploitation. I was used to being moved without warning, without any say, not knowing where I was going or whether I was allowed to pack my clothes. After years in foster care, I didn't think anyone would want to take care of me unless they were paid. So, when my pimp expected me to make money to support the family, it made sense to me.
It's hard. It's a hard,
children. They're
hard
not loved, and when you're a young woman and you're loved for the first time, or man too, it's a powerful incentive. And so, the cure to that is that we have to love these children That's not hard to do. All they have to do is take the barriers, wait to let the family love them first before the pimps get to them. And so that is what the Family First Act does.
So I'm sorry. I know it's hard. It's
my
hard.
little Haley was 10 years old, 10, and they wanted to put her in a group home. And I'm a nurse, and my husband was an engineer. And we fought so damn hard, and we had one miracle after another. And I know we're so lucky that she did not hit into a group home. And, it opened my eyes. We were lucky. A lot of kids aren't.
Yeah, they aren't. And you do so much. And I know that you're still working on this bill. It's hard work that we do. I'm sorry. I want me to give you a minute. It's a harsh reality, but it's something that the public...
Well, let me tell you a funny little story that just happened.
Well, the public needs to be able to hear this because we have to be able to adult for these children.
And it's on topic, don't worry. I'm a former state committee woman, former Hillary Clinton delegate twice, and of course now that I have the facts, which we all didn't get, I'm no longer in favor of her, but I was at a Democratic dinner, and I sat down next to a gentleman that I'd known for a long time, and he was the head of Health and Human Services for the state of Washington. And this was about a little over a week ago. I sat down next to him, and he looked at me and he said, "Oh, hello, Kathleen." And I said, "Hello, Ed." And he said, "Well, how many properties do you own now?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. A few, And then he wanted to know specifics, like how many. And so then he looked straight at me and he said, "You are an enemy of the state." He said, "And you are in danger." And I was just so shocked. I looked straight at him, and this is a room full of high-level Democrats. This guy had literally 4 empty glasses of wine in front of him. Oh 4. And he'd only been there for about an hour, so he was talking with loose lips, let's put it this way. So I looked at him basically, and I said, "Good God, Ed, I've been in danger before, and I'm going to be in danger again. And if you think this kind of paper-thin, threat is going to make me stop advocating for the children, you're wrong." Yeah. He didn't want me to go to this event. He did not want me to go and talk about the link between prostitution and foster care. And at first I was just simply offended, but the more I think about it, the more I think, why doesn't he want me to go and talk about the link between foster care and prostitution? Why did he threaten me with danger in front of, a room full of witnesses, basically? That was just not too smart on his part, not to mention the fact that, I think that whatever danger may or may not have been out there got thwarted because, good God, they know who to look for.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought it up on the radio.
Well, it's past. I'm not worried about it, because frankly, I have been in danger before. We all have, for God's sake. We're fighting
we've all put
huge enemy. We've got this huge enemy with unlimited resources and unlimited funds against us little tiny itty-bitty people who most of our friends and family don't even believe that what's going on is real, or they're mad at us because we're actually speaking out. It's really kind of a lonely, awful, scenario you go into when you've decided to, just not back down.
Well, yeah, and I'm in that boat too, and I get the threats as well, and I get targeted very often. My character gets attacked, and things of that nature. But it's what else is there to stand up for other than the children? I can't.
Yeah, that's right. Do you we can kind of consider ourselves what's called dog warriors. And what that is, it's a kind of an Indian term for a type of a warrior. That I'm not strong, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, I'm not an elected official, I'm just a grandma. So I've got very limited resources and I've got very little ability to affect change. All I have going for me is persistence. And what a dog warrior is it's somebody who puts a chain around their foot and they chain it to the ground and they make that kind of commitment not to back down, not to stop, and not to go backwards, and to keep fighting until they're dead or it's done.
Well, I'm so, thankful for my little circle of supporters like yourself and my listeners that, are loyal and stick with me through all of the craziness because it gets wild. But, our children are our most precious resource that we have. And what's happening, we've got to be able to adult and step up to the plate for the kids because turning a blind eye isn't the answer. And we can see that it's getting worse, especially with the human trafficking. I consider the fraud on the court human trafficking.
Well, human trafficking is awful. I cannot believe it's so multifaceted and it's been so out there and so reported and so easy to prove, and they're so not doing anything about it. Mm-hmm. Really, literally, the Congress tried, Wyden and Hatch tried and tried and tried and tried. All of these records are available to work with Health and Human Services to get some sort of different scenario going on with these group homes. They didn't really want to just stop the group home funding, but Health and Human Services literally left them no choice. They would not even give them any data. They ignored subpoenas. And so, finally it was Senator Hatch who just thought, you know what? These are bad outcomes. We're spending $9 billion basically to pay pimps in order to produce foster cares. And if that was our objective, that would be great. We were doing a good job of it, but that is not our objective. Why should we be spending money on it? And good point. That's what Congress's superpower is the power of the purse. It's their only superpower. And so literally the only thing in the end that Congress can do to fix problems is either to fund the bureaucracy or not to fund the bureaucracy. And so the sleeping giants finally woke up and realized that they don't have to fund bad outcomes. And Health and Human Services is literally, and this is really an important part that a lot of people don't realize, but Health and Human Services is literally more powerful than Congress right now because they can out-lawyer them.
Yeah. Yes, it's we don't have many voices representing we the people in Congress at all right now.
Right.
So, but I think probably one of the most disturbing facts that I learned, in this journey of research, especially when I left California, there were 1,000 registered pedophiles that were approved foster care placements when I left.
Well, they have to be doing something in order to get that great result. If you were trying for, let's say for an example, instead of prostitutes, they were producing musicians, okay? So let's say that you go into foster care and you become a musician. Let's say 95% of them become musicians. It's about as likely to become a musician, statistically, number-wise, as it is a prostitute. Actually, more so, but anyway, pretty close, just an example. So if they were producing all these musicians, boy, we would be thrilled to death with them, right? They would be doing really, really good, and we would want to support that sort of a thing. But when the opposite happens and they are producing consistently very, very, very bad results, they feel no obligation to report them or do anything about it.
Yeah. And
I actually have a solution for that too. in part.
I'm sorry, can I just say one thing?
You bet. You go ahead.
Yeah, because I think this is
lots of things.
just really, really short. It's a really short little thing I'm going to throw in there. But the way that the system is set up currently, it profits from failure. The failure of the family, the failure of the child, it really needs to be just totally restructured.
Remember this, the social worker's goal, the social worker wins. The social worker is patted on the back when the child is removed from the family and that check comes in for adopting the child out. That's how the office gets paid. That's drives the behavior. If you keep remembering that, that will explain every action they take.
Well, I certainly would like to see something new implemented in as a template myself, but I'm excited about the Families First Act, and I know you don't have much time. How can folks go to learn more about the First Families Act and support your efforts?
Sure. And actually, it's already done. I mean, the president has signed it, and the Health and Human Services, this is really amazing, and this just came off the press, basically. We knew that there were probably a couple moles in there that we were working with, and as it turned out, there were, and they went to work for the state of California to try to stop the Family First Act, and they were unsuccessful, in large part because Health and Human Services had lost their credibility over the migrant children, and the judges are actually finally starting to grow some balls and wake up and really start to, do what's just and not just what has always been done in precedent before them. So there were a couple of good factors there. So every time Congress had ever tried to stop Health and Human Services from doing something that they didn't want them to do by using the power of the purse, they were able to outgun them legislatively. This was the first time they weren't able to do it, and the Family First Act is actually going to happen. Just weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, was the first time most social workers even heard the word Family First Act. They didn't know what it was. So now it's in Health and Human Services, their policies and that sort of thing. Starting October 30th, I think it is this year, if the offices choose, which I'm sure not one will, but if they chose to, they could immediately start getting some funds to do preventative activities like help pay for rent or, the critical things that, oh my God, you lost your job, then your wife lost the job, and then the kid got sick sort of a thing, Those emergencies that sometimes we just don't have backups for. Instead of taking the children away, they'll have some resources for them. Or real honest to God, real rehab, not wait until she's a year out and has unsuccessful and then maybe give her rehab after you're sure you can take the child away, those sort of things. Rehab when it's needed right up front. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of good things that are going on with the Family First Act, but there, again, like I said, though, there's one really, 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 really bad thing, and that is that the AFTA, the Adoption and Safe Family Act portion of that adoption bonus to the county is still in there. Now, it's on hold, but I don't trust it until it's taken out. And so that is the one thing that we really need to work on. And Connie Reguli, and you're probably familiar with that, has really taken the charge on this. She's sending letters to the White House and really, really trying to get them to drop the AFTA part of the Family First Act.
Yeah, she has a platform on Facebook, and she's recently been taking, I recently got attacked on Facebook, and my character was attacked, and I lost quite a few members. Probably, I don't even know how many, and it was all a contrived drama. But then I noticed Connie Reguli was getting it too. Recently, she's been getting a lot of guff. I mean, I think she was even put in jail.
I've already discussed this with Connie, okay, and this is just a theory of mine, so this is not fact, this is theory, okay? 3 weeks ago, the social workers found out that some of them are going to be laid off for the first time in their lives. Never, ever in recorded history has any social workers ever been laid off, but since they're going to be closing down 9 out of 10 of the dollars that they have for group homes, they're going to have to let people go eventually. I mean, they could see the writing on the wall. So what happens when you're pissed off? What do?
You retaliate. Well,
So we've seen a huge increase in retaliation over the last few weeks. I mean, like I said, I was warned, right?
Wow, that makes so much sense now. I don't feel so like. I mean, I saw.
Probably mold. Like, I mean, people. The advocates. There's one that lost their twins over absolute lies, and they're on the verge of getting them back because they were able to prove it. And Connie's been attacked, and there's been about 5, really up there advocates that have gotten, just nailed here in the last 3 weeks.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Then I don't feel so bad. I was like, what is going on?
Just, you know what? When Ed said that to me, I was very offended at first. I thought, you know what? He's right. I am an enemy of the deep state.
Yeah. Well,
so I'm now an enemy of this deep state club. And if you so would like to be, you could be enemy of the deep state club member 6.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll take that as a yes. You'll take up number 6.
Yes, I'm enjoying that club. Gladly.
We've got a fan club going, the enemies of the deep state fan club, and we should have some cooking parties or knitting parties,
Sounds fun to me.
Yeah.
Listen, we're still going to work on this AFSA part of the bill because the American Safe Families Act needs to go.
Yes, it does. It really does. It does. It needs to go. So if those things happen, then the other good part of the Family First Act is that, and this is another thing that I actually can be very proud of because I got them to do this. I went and I said, listen, guys, you're spending all this money and you're not attaching it to any objectives. I mean, you just give money and that's it. You don't expect them to do this, that, or the other thing in order to get the money. And you have to have objectives. Otherwise, you don't know where the money's going. You don't know if it's being spent correctly, yada, 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 yada. And so, by golly, Senator Wyden put in a bill that passed about starting to put objective data and objectives tied to federal funds so that, they can kind of mold them. The Congress just literally lost control of everything for a little while. It was bad. They forgot what their superpower was, is really what happened. They forgot that the way that they were supposed to solve problems was by not funding them. You fund good products, and you do not fund for bad products. They'd completely lost that concept. And so by kind of redirecting them, and we gave them cookies, and us grandmas, we gave them sob stories and showed them pictures of our grandmas, and we gave them more cookies, and then we gave them some science, and, we just kept coming back and coming back and coming back. We wore them out.
Good. That's what we need. We need people that aren't going to give up, that are going to stand their ground and keep coming back for more, because there is going to be attacks and there's going to be character assassinations and, all of that. That kind of goes with, it's par for the course, right?
And wear it as a badge of honor. For goodness sake, if you're getting attacked and that sort of thing, that means you're making a difference, girlfriend.
Thank you.
You go for it.
Yay.
It's kind of like break a leg,
So the First Families Act, there's a website.
And let me just correct you a little bit. It's called the Families First Act and Preventative Services.
Okay.
Just to like.
And preventative services. Okay.
Yeah.
And that is is it a website, an actual website?
Yeah, you just Google it and it'll come up. If you even just put the Family First Act in, it'll come up, and then you can just download it from there.
Okay, awesome. Anything else that you want to share with the listeners today? Or?
We're at the For the Children event this year, and me and Connie and Terry and Jennifer Wynn will all be presenting on 9/11 around 10 a.m. And so they'll be all going Facebook Live. But there's a huge amount of events that are going on that are going to be really fun here in Washington, D.C. We're going to have comedians. We're going to have marches. We're going to go to the White House. And we'll have an educational panel that will be inside of Congress in the Education Room South. That's where Congress has a lot of its meetings at. And us, the gals, and other folks that are having to do with child welfare reform are going to be given and presenting at the Congress. And there's going to be, so they say, a lot of Congress people and stuff. But even if there aren't, and there probably will be. I'm not saying that there won't. But the bottom line is that we are going to get together as a collective group, and we are going to go Facebook Live, and we are going to talk inside of Congress about what people will not talk about, such as the link between foster care and prostitution, and to open our eyes and stop treating these people who have been the victims of sex trafficking as if they're criminals. You know, these are folks that were put in a position that it was do or die, and they did what they had to do because they had no other options. And we need to rehabilitate them and help them, not point criminal at them.
Well, I thank you so much for speaking so boldly on this issue, because it's a huge issue. And like I said, we need to adult and step up for the children. And you're awesome. You're an awesome grandma. Thank you so much, Kathlee.
Okay, you're welcome. It's good talking to you as always.
You too. And so I'm going to wrap up the show, and hopefully we'll have you on again.
That sounds good.
All right. It's been fun. Thank you. All right, guys. So this has been another episode of Porthole to Justice Off the Cuff. It's just a quick show today, but I thank you so much for tuning in and catching up with Kathlee Arthur on the First Families Act. You can check that out. I think there's a link on Google. You can search First Families Act, and yeah, I'm available on Facebook, Porthole to Justice, Instagram, and I'm on Twitter as well. You can subscribe to the show on free on Spreaker.com. And I'm going to play, let's see. The song, the intro song is called Here We Are, vocals by Trish Daniel. And the song I'm going to end with is called Death Threat, and another song sung by Trish Daniel. It's one of my favorites.
I told you they were following you. I told you they are after you, because you tell the truth. You don't cover their lies. They are your death threat, death threat, death threat. They are your death threat, death threat, death threat. They are your death threat, death threat, death threat. But I have news for them. I will keep on saying what they do, all the lies they keep, and all the bodies they hide. They are your death threat, death threat, death threat. They are your death threat, death threat, death threat. They are evil, they are scum. They are your death threat, death threat. They are your death threat, death threat, death threat. They are your death threat, death threat, death threat. They are your death threat, death threat, death threat. One day there will be justice. One day there will be peace. One day there will be another way. But for now, I have death threats. They are your death threat, death threat. They lie about me. They cry into me. They hide from me. They see what I possess. They slide away. a better world. They are your death threat, death threat, death threat. They are your death threat, death threat, death threat. They are your death threat, death threat, death threat. They pry into me. They hide from me. They seek what I possess. They slide